Welcome to 11 Yards Podcast. This is Anthony of Legit Football, and I'm joined by Jimmy Ray of NFL Stats on Twitter. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. As a Lions fan, I couldn't be
Yeah,
happier. But as a football fan, getting closer to postseason, seeing everything kind of come together, I think this is where it gets the most exciting.
it sure does. Yeah, we talked about it yesterday at the Power Rankings podcast with Brian. I mean, this is where it gets really juicy. This is where the matchups matter a little more. Not that they didn't matter before, but now it definitely gets turned up a notch in terms of gameplay and which teams are in it to win it, which teams are out of it. But obviously, they still want to get a win heading into the next season. Obviously, some teams are cheering for losses, but most people's minds don't go that way. I feel like.
So, what team are you most looking forward to seeing in postseason?
The Eagles, no doubt. I think that's probably the easiest answer. Seeing how the newly renovated team, the 12-1 Philadelphia Eagles, look in the postseason, they're most likely going to bye. So we got to wait a little longer. So the expectations are as high as it gets for that team. I have a friend who's an Eagles fan, and I was telling him, I mean, it's Super Bowl or bust for most teams, but for this team specifically, if they get trounced, I mean, it's going to be an upset if they get beat before the Super Bowl at this point. With how much they've been talked about and how much better they seem than some of the other teams in the NFC and NFL as a whole right now.
Yeah, for the record they have and the way that they've been playing, even the championship isn't good enough.
Right.
It has to be that losing in the Super Bowl, you might be able to get away with it, say like maybe next year, but they have to at least make it to the Super Bowl to hold up who they are
Mm-hmm.
to keep that narrative alive. So
Yeah. Do you have
I
a team?
am, yeah, I do. I'm really excited to see the Bengals because I
Oh yeah.
last year and I didn't root against the Rams in the Super Bowl because of Stafford. So
Mm-hmm.
now that the Rams aren't going to go to the Super Bowl for sure, if Cincinnati does, I'll be able to root for the Bengals this time. I
There we
like Joe
go.
Burrow. I like Jamar Chase. They're a really good quarterback wide receiver duo, and the defense is kind of getting their footing. So I think they're just so exciting to play, and I think it'll be really cool to see them if they beat Buffalo, which
Right.
I think Buffalo's really exciting to play. I have a really good friend who's a Bills fan, so I'm supporting the Bills for him. So
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see a Chiefs Bills matchup maybe at some point in the playoffs or a good matchup like that. So I'm excited to see rivalries are made in the playoffs. I feel like then it's like after in the regular season next year or the year after they play each other, we go back to the playoffs because it just means so much more. It's if you eliminate a team, you just got that grudge against them for the rest of the year.
yeah, especially that overtime drama in the
Oh
playoffs
yeah,
last year
oh
with the
yeah,
Bills. I mean, if they play again, it's going to be probably the best game of the year. I
no
could
doubt.
definitely see that being a reality. So first, as always, we're going to go over the week leaders. So in passing, Kirk Cousins in his loss against Detroit 34-23 did throw for 31 completions, 425 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is a career game for Cousins. It's too bad he didn't come out the win. Well, too bad for him, not
Mm-hmm.
too bad for Lions fans, but 2 touchdowns. A lot of those yards are 200 I'm curious now. Um 223 of those yards were to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, yeah,
So the
franchise record
Lions,
day.
other than week 3, where they shut down Justin Jefferson completely, could not stop him in this game. If it wasn't for Detroit scoring on every drive, then they could have lost that game because of Kirk Cousins' performance in that one, 124.5 rating. What do you think about this? What do you think about Cousins?
Yeah, I mean, when you have a loss, it's kind of empty stats, but obviously Justin Jefferson had the quietest 200-yard day that we've seen from a wide receiver in a long while, mostly because they were getting trounced on the defensive side of the ball. And that's the biggest weakness for the Vikings right now is will they be able to step up on the defensive side to help out their offense because their offense has enough playmakers to kind of make it happen, but they can't do everything all the time, and they will make mistakes. Kirk Cousins isn't a perfect QB by any means, but he does put up good numbers and has a good chemistry with Justin Jefferson. But if you look at the numbers, obviously he's playing really well, has a great passer rating. But like if you take away that result, what would you guess? You'd probably guess that they won it by a few scores. So just looking at it that way, that his only loss on the board here in the top 5 passing yardage.
A lot of people are saying like Kirk Cousins is washed, he's getting
Right.
older, but he's kind of proving that otherwise. I remember watching him in Michigan State. I'm a Spartans fan, so I really liked Kirk Cousins when he came into the NFL. And then he went to the rival team, and I'm like, oh no, what do I do? So I think he's still a decent quarterback. He's great in play action. If he has a good receiver to throw to, then he can definitely throw the ball.
Yeah, and he hasn't had too many instances where he doesn't have a good receiver. He always has. He has Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. Now he has Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. So it's a nice combo.
So next we have Trevor Lawrence in his win 36-22 at Tennessee. Most of those points were in the air, where he had 3 touchdowns and 30 completions and 368 yards. So Trevor Lawrence he's becoming the guy that we thought he was drafted to be. Urban Meyer, I think we can all say, definitely stunted his development. And so this is his year to take the opportunity to become a better quarterback. I can see in the future Jacksonville being a better team. Right now, they're still a little bit mediocre. Zay Jones scored another touchdown. And so Trevor Lawrence is definitely figuring out how to play pro ball, and he's doing a good job doing it.
Yeah, in his past 5 games, he hasn't thrown an interception. He's thrown 10 touchdowns. He's playing phenomenal ball. And when you don't make mistakes like that, that'll help you out your team tremendously. And then if you don't get sacked as well, that's a combo of the offensive line and the QB working together and making plays not to get down, which is always important. Always huge not to take negative plays. I feel like that's a big thing in the NFL and getting wins. So shout out to Trevor Lawrence. It's nice that the Jaguars won't have to worry about a QB.
Number 3, we have Justin Herbert, Los Angeles Chargers. And when he has his targets back, when he has his team back and healthy, he produces. And they're a good team again. They're the team that we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. 39 for 51, 367 yards and 1 touchdown. He was sacked 4 times, but they got the win 23-17 against Miami.
Yeah, he has the most passing yards now in the first 3 seasons of a player's career. Obviously, the Chargers throw the ball a lot, which is always helpful, and they throw to Austin Eckler, which is an easy pass at times. And then Patrick Mahomes, he didn't have a lot of games his first season, so a lot of things around that stat that you need to take a look at. But he did pass Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning, so nothing to fret about. You can find little things in every stat, but it's nice to see him getting on top of that stat.
Yeah, I do like that stat, and it is impressive. I know you could talk about how a lot of games were missed, but Justin Herbert is young in a league of veterans. So in order to do that well, playing against experienced players, then that's still pretty impressive to me if you look at it in that perspective.
Yeah, you can't fault him for doing his job. I feel like obviously the stat comes with a lot of other things, but you just got to give a shout out to Justin Herbert, and the Chargers just need to get some wins and significant wins if he'll be taken seriously for the future. But obviously there's more to it than just him.
So number 4, we have Patrick Mahomes, which usually likes to make the top 5, but a near miss against Denver, 34-28. He threw 28 for 42, 352 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But this is the number I want to talk about. He threw 3 interceptions in that game.
Yeah, not ideal.
It's just a fluke. Were the Broncos defense just on top of things, or was Mahomes just throwing it out when he wasn't supposed to? What happened here? They almost lost against a really bad Broncos team.
I mean, I think it was a mix of both. I think he was making mistakes. The Broncos are a very good defense, so we obviously should take that into account. And they had some good mismatches on the defensive side of the ball that led them to get some good takeaways and take advantage of some opportunities when they needed to. Obviously, I'm talking like they won. They didn't win because Patrick Mahomes finds a way to win. For every interception he throws, he'll expect him to throw another touchdown just to make up for it, because that's what he does, and that's what that's how good he is. So, but shout out to the Broncos defense for making good plays. But unfortunately, they were playing the Chiefs this week. If they were playing any other team, I could have foresaw a win. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So their season continues to go down after a pretty good outing from both sides of the ball in different ways.
I agree. And number 5 is my guy, Jared Goff. Win against Minnesota, 34-23, probably the biggest win of the season. He threw 27 for 39, 330 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 0 interceptions, 0 sacks, 0 fumbles, 120.7 rating. This was an incredible performance. Jared Goff he's doing what Justin Herbert, what I was saying about Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, he's doing what was expected of him. For a while, he wasn't performing to his caliber, and now he is. He's playing pro ball like a pro player and winning games at that. So I got this this chart here.
Quick stat for him. I saw from the Lions PR Twitter account. I don't know if you saw this. Most seasons with 20 plus passing touchdowns since 2017. First place is Kirk Cousins. He has every year since 2017 is only QB to get all 6 seasons with 20 plus passing touchdowns. Jared Goff with 5. He's second.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was
I do like that.
interesting. It's a little different. Like just picking 2017 because there were a lot of QBs after that started playing really well, a lot of young QBs. But still, that's impressive.
Yeah, when with St. Brown and with Chark and now Jameson Williams is healthy, Jared Goff can play really well if he has the guys he has chemistry with, and I think that's a big thing. So I'm showing you this chart because 3 weeks ago, this little box right here, this little box here, and this box here were red.
Okay.
Worse than average. And now it's changing. Now it's yellow. And then you have green all the way down this side. So what I'm showing is the improvement, because this was all green and yellow and red, and now you're seeing a lot of green. This is league passer rating versus league average. And so he's doing a lot better, especially like right here under 10 yards, where a lot of those yards after catch happen with like Swift, Brock Wright. So, enough about Goff. I'm a fan, so it's hard not to talk about it.
He has a bad passer rating when throwing to receivers that are already in the pocket with him. So that's interesting.
Yeah. That's
back in the middle, but obviously he looks like it leans to the right side, plays better that way. But as a whole, he's playing really well, and they're taking advantage of his strengths that he has. And as a Colts fan, I'm excited because I don't know if the Lions will draft a QB with the top pick. But if they don't, that gives the Colts a chance to draft a QB with the top pick.
Yeah, I think that got shut down.
What your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell both made it clear that Jared Goff is going to be the future quarterback.
Okay.
That he's not a bridge quarterback. And with a pick like that, we have 6 top 60 picks in the draft. I think maybe number 5, like maybe a late round for a backup quarterback, but definitely not a first round quarterback. Not this year anyway. Because Jared Goff is kind of showing, he's proving what he can do. He's still a young guy. He's still early in his career. So I think there's a lot to see here.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. I honestly would be surprised if they still picked a QB, but at this point, I feel like you can't, because then that puts a lot of distrust in your QB now. But if they're really enamored by a young quarterback and feel like he's a future franchise, you might have to take a shot on it. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure at this point, all the Lions fans wants to stick with Jared Goff.
Not
all
of
work
them,
on the
I'll tell you
defense.
that.
Okay,
I'll tell you not all of them.
And work on you guys' defense as a whole, so you guys can play better. Because offense has they haven't been the problem. So
right, for sure. So down to rushing leaders, we have Miles Sanders, 17 carries for 144 yards in his win against the New York Giants, 48-22, 2 touchdowns, 8.5 average. Miles Sanders has definitely come out as one of the better running backs in the league, playing for the Eagles. He was quiet at the beginning of the season. He was coming off an injury, but now he's really showing how to open up the Eagles' run game, which also opens up Jalen Hurts' ability to pass. So I think Miles Sanders is a very crucial guy to have. 17 carries, 144 yards. Those are good numbers.
Yeah, I mean, he's the first 1,000-yard rusher for the Eagles since 2014, LaShawn McCoy. He has 11 touchdowns this season. Do you remember how many rushing touchdowns he had last season?
No, I don't.
He had 0 last season.
He had 0. Okay.
He had 0. Kenneth Gainwell got a few. I forget. I believe Boston Scott might have gotten a few as well. So Miles Sanders he had a decent amount of yardage last year, but he didn't get any touchdowns. Let's just say he's paying dividends for my fantasy teams. I can count on him every week to get yards or touchdown or something along those lines. He's the benefit of a really good offense as well as a whole, which benefits everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And you can see a lot of these, a lot of the green, which is 5+ yards gained. There's a lot past like 10 yards off. There's one past 20, and then there's that 40-yard run for a touchdown. So yeah, you can see how efficient he is. He's fast. He's able to move. His footwork is real nice. So he's definitely improved a lot since last year. He's doing really well.
Yeah, big shout out to him.
Derrick Henry, 17 carries, 121 yards in his loss against Jacksonville, 36-22 for 1 touchdown. 2 fumbles. I don't know how many, if any of those were lost. I forgot to check on that. But Derrick Henry, as usual, is still putting up those numbers. He's definitely reliable. If you're looking for a running back to bet the over on, I usually would bet Derrick Henry. He usually gets 100+ yards in most games because they rely on him, and they rely on him for a reason. He does really well.
Yeah, the thing about this game was they stopped him very well in the second half. I believe he only had like 1 or 2 rushing yards in the second half after having like 120 in the first half. Both his fumbles were lost against the Jaguars, which definitely didn't help in terms of their winnability rate against the Jaguars. So 121 yards, 7.1 average looks good on paper. Obviously, there were some bad situations in the second half and fumbling the ball that hurt the team tremendously.
So I think we could possibly say that this is a fraud number for this game because you're right, he didn't do very good. We're gonna take him off number 2 there. So J.K. Dobbins, I know, coming off a really bad injury, so he's kind of making his way into the NFL. I guess we could say this is his rookie season. 15 carries for 120 yards and 1 touchdown in their win against Pittsburgh, 16-14. Without Lamar Jackson, you need a running back to rely on because you need to have that run game, which you already know you have, and J.K. Dobbins really opened that up for them.
Yeah, it's very good to see for Ravens fans that J.K. Dobbins is putting up numbers and getting big runs. There was a play that went viral where he didn't go all the way. He didn't have that burst at the end. I just don't foresee that maybe being a thing this year. I think it'll still take a little bit of time, and hopefully he gets that back. But he still can break off good runs, has good vision, has good has good ability to get off the line of scrimmage and make a big play. So
I remember watching highlights of him in college before the draft a couple years ago, and even in college, his footwork is great. He's really good at missing defenders, and I think that this is really showing now in the National Football League, and I think he's going to go far with Baltimore.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, who has been a 49er for a few weeks now, 14 carries, 119 yards, and 1 touchdown in their 35-7 win against Tampa Bay. How much did McCaffrey have on this game, or how much was this in garbage time?
I don't think there was any garbage time really, because you gotta put up the points when you need to against any team, and he put up the yardage that was necessary. He's a baller, and that's just on the ground. He probably had some receiving yards as well. Always benefit for a rookie quarterback to have someone like Christian McCaffrey to hand the ball to when needed. So probably a little bit of both in terms of quote unquote garbage time, but I don't like to call it that because I think they should be pushing it as much as possible unless you have the first string out just due to injuries, which I think is smart as well. But Christian McCaffrey is efficient as it gets as a running back.
So on number 5, Josh Jacobs ran 27 times, still couldn't hit 100 yards. He ended up getting 99 yards, 3.7 average for 1 touchdown in their loss against the Rams, 17-16. This is the crazy comeback that Baker Mayfield, the 98-yard drive to prove that he's the new GOAT. At least the GOAT in LA. So Josh Jacobs, not much to talk about here. He's been very efficient all season, but the Rams were able to stop him. A lot of this just trying to die for first downs, hence the 3.7 average. And he did get 1 touchdown. The longest run was 15 yards. So he didn't do very good in this game as a whole, but he did get first downs. And a lot of times that's very crucial.
take away that 15-yard run, and then the average for yards per carry goes down quite a bit there. But I think they ran him down, and he was injured still. You could see him coming up injured. They were playing pretty conservatively in the second half, and that's what unfortunately led to the loss. Davante Adams played so well at the first drive and some of that first half. You'd think they'd continue getting him the ball, and that's why I went back to Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers just running it up on the Bucs any way they could. I feel like the Raiders just didn't do that. That's why they've lost so many leads. But that's no offense to Josh Jacobs, but that's not a good game plan for him, and just not a good yards per carry. But he almost hit 100 yards. But as you can see, if you look at all the stats and that game as a whole, it wasn't beneficial to the team.
So the receiving leaders, now we have Justin Jefferson, which we just talked about at the beginning of the show with Kirk Cousins. 11 receptions, 223 yards. That's a 20.3 yard average. That's a high average. He did not score a touchdown. His longest was 47 yards. This was the quietest career performance I've ever seen from Justin Jefferson. I think the hype with the Lions being favored and everything, I think that it overshadowed the actual performance because the Lions did end up winning. Their offense was operating on every level, and they didn't score enough points to beat them. So I think it was overshadowed, but Justin Jefferson did have a really good game.
Right, and he's the first wide receiver to have 1,400 plus yards in each of his first 3 seasons. He gets that yardage up. He's awesome. That's all you can really say. We've said it every week. I feel like he's on this list.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're a fantasy owner, even Dynasty, this is the guy to have. Evan Ingram, a tight end, caught 11 times, 162 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the win against Tennessee. This is new. I think this is the first time I've seen Ingram on a top 5 receiver list, maybe even top 10. So he definitely had a really good game. Trevor Lawrence liked him a lot in this game, and I think that getting those connections were very good for Jacksonville, obviously, because they won 36-22. So he got 2 of the touchdowns. One was Zay Jones, so he had a lot to do with this win. I think that's really important to realize there.
Yeah, I mean, Evan Ingram, if you looked up during the game, he was catching the ball from Trevor Lawrence. He was playing phenomenal. It's his 4th 100-yard game of his career, first one in a little while. So he definitely played well, and those fantasy owners that ended up playing him, he's the tight end 4 in fantasy this year, which is very surprising. As a whole, you can't really predict tight ends too well. It's from game to game at that point, unless you have Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews sometimes, but Mark Andrews hasn't scored a touchdown in a while. But Evan Ingram was burning Tennessee all day, so he deserves that respect.
So number 3, we have Chris Moore of Houston. This is another new name. 10 receptions, 124 yards. Did not score a touchdown. So they almost beat Dallas, and Chris Moore was a very important part of that. I think he got them to the red zone. I remember there's a sideline catch to get them inside the 10. So he did pretty good as a receiver, and I think that after this performance, he might be used more. What do you think of Chris Moore?
Yeah. I mean, he was a top wide receiver for the Texans. He was burning the secondary of the Cowboys all day. It's very surprisingly to see him on this list, but somebody has to catch balls for the Texans. Unfortunately, they couldn't pull out the win. They were very, very, very close to beating the Cowboys. I thought it was in the bag for them for a little bit, except for that turnover on downs, a 98-yard drive by the Cowboys. But Chris Moore showed out. I doubt anybody started him in fantasy, but he played pretty well, put up some good numbers.
Which is hard to do against that Dallas secondary. So
sure, yeah,
that's really impressive. Number 4, we have Jamar Chase, win against Cleveland. 10 receptions, 119 yards, 1 touchdown. This is normal. This happens a lot since he's been back. Joe Burrow has made him his main target, and it's really showing on paper here.
Yeah, no T. Higgins. He was off the injury report, but then still didn't end up playing. Played 1 snap. Another reference to fantasy football in terms of the disappointment for that. But if you did have Jamar Chase, he played well enough to hopefully secure your fantasy football playoffs. spot. Jamar Chase is one of the best young wide receivers in the NFL, up there with Justin Jefferson. Yeah.
Number 5, we have Mike Williams of the Chargers in their win against Miami. 6 receptions, 116 yards, and 1 touchdown. This is another good performance because if you can catch 6 passes and get 116 yards and 6 of them, that's impressive with 1 touchdown. That's a lot of yards and such a low number of receptions. So Mike Williams was targeted only 6 times because Keenan Allen was still Justin Herbert's main guy after he came back, but he was a crucial play in this game against Miami, and I think that had a lot to do with why they won.
Yeah, he's a boomer bust guy, and if he's catching the ball down the field and making big plays. So he made the most of his targets and 19.3 yards per carry or per catch. It's not as much as Justin Jefferson, but dang, is it pretty good.
So we're just going to go through the sacks real quick. I did sort it by sacks again. We have Josh Uche of New England, linebacker, 5 total tackles, 3 sacks. Brandon Graham, defensive end, Philadelphia, 3 sacks. Myles Garrett got 2. Azeez Ojulari got 2. And Quinnen Williams got 2 sacks. So those are our sack leaders. Anything stick out here?
Yeah, Josh Uke and Brandon Graham were both players of the week in their respective. I'm not too sure. In their respective conferences. Josh has 10 sacks in his last 6 games. In his first 5 games, he had 0. So Matt Judon's letting him get some sacks, letting him get to the QB a little bit. They're taking turns at this point. I'm sure we'll see Matt Judon later on in the sack leaders for the season. But Josh is headed up there, and Brandon Graham, he's dominant on the defensive line for the Eagles. And that just shows the Eagles are all over this. Stat leaders week by week. They're a very balanced team, and that's why people consider them the best in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. And the New England defense is definitely nothing to mess with. And this is why. Yeah. I mean, there's always a Patriot on some kind of list because they have some kind of defensive performance. So you said you have some stats prepared. So
yeah,
let's do.
I feel like I've said a lot of them.
We'll call it a NFL stat break.
Yeah, the Cowboys, the last time they've won 10 plus games in back-to-back seasons. Do you have any idea when that could be, or do you already know?
No, I don't.
They had 10 plus wins from 91 to 96 in each season. Since 96, they didn't have 10 wins in back-to-back seasons. So that's, I mean, they're playing well consistently now. Will they get to the big game? We'll wait and see. But they're playing pretty well right now. So except for the Texans game, obviously, but every team at this point has had a game like that. I mean, the Chiefs lost to the Colts. So
right.
Yeah. And then Jerry Jeudy, I found this stat pretty interesting. He's the first Broncos player with 3+ receiving touchdowns since 2014. And in 2014, they had Peyton Manning. They had a lot of good wide receivers, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and tight end Julius Thomas. All 3 of those guys had a 3+ touchdown game that season. So Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Julius Thomas, they all had 3 touchdowns in a game that season. And then it didn't happen since until recently when Jerry Jeudy just had it. So that was really good against the Chiefs defense. One more. The Lions have scored 25+ straight. I said this yesterday in 5 straight games, first time since 1954.
Let's go. I know that's a long time though. That's insane. It's bad. So I have and this is going to look like a lot right now because that's just a lot of numbers. We already know the top 5. It's been the same all season. So I wanted to focus on these guys here. We have Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and Trevor Lawrence because they just made it onto this list. They're really making their way up there. And then what I've, and by the way, this is sorted by pass yards. So you can see everyone's up in the 3,000s on this list. Patrick Mahomes is the only one with over 4,000. But Jared Goff, 3,356. He's right there. He's 6 yards away from Kirk Cousins, which I thought was kind of interesting. Trevor Lawrence, 2,202. Geno Smith is up there, catching up to Josh Allen. So you can see these quarterbacks here. They're not like when you think elite quarterback, you don't think these names here. But I just want to put that out there that they are up there and they're making their way. They're doing very well, all 4 of these guys. So just want to give them some recognition for making this list.
Yeah, a couple like Geno Smith and Jared Goff. They're playing for kind of their livelihood in terms of keeping the starting job, and they're succeeding in that. The top 10 in a lot of the passing stats. They're showing out, and their teams are getting some wins. They've had some downsides in the season. They've had some spots where they make mistakes and aren't as good. But in terms of Jared Goff, I feel like the defense has kind of let him down more than Geno Smith. But Geno Smith hasn't made too many mistakes, and the rushing defense hasn't helped him at all. But I think these QBs are playing really well this season, and obviously there's a few QBs in here that are different from season to season. So if they can keep it up, that's very good to see.
So for rushing, nothing really changed here either. We have Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, and Miles Sanders. So it's about the same as it was last week. So we don't have to talk about this too much, but Miles Sanders is definitely making his way up. He's catching up to Saquon Barkley. I can see him maybe being top 3 if he keeps having performances like he did last week. Out of these, Nick Chubb leads in touchdowns. So Nick Chubb is still having a decent season, which we all expected. I put him on my fantasy league and then traded him for Breece Hall in a first round pick for next year's dynasty. So hopefully that was worth it.
You traded who? Nick Chubb?
Nick Chubb, yeah.
Breece Hall in the first?
Yes, Breece Hall.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought so. So I'm looking forward to that. I was already losing, so I had to do something.
Right. I think that's really good. So
any thoughts here? Anything stick out?
Not too much. All of these running backs have had their moment. Josh Jacobs has been the most consistent one. As a whole, he's getting a lot of recognition there that we've already given him. Saquon Barkley, he's kind of going downhill a little bit in terms of his production, but I still think he's a pretty good running back. And we've already talked about Miles Sanders, and you just talked about Nick Chubb. So some pretty good stats here. Miles Sanders is the only one without a fumble, so that would definitely help your team out.
Yeah, that's good. A lot of games are decided by turnovers, and fumbles are
sure. Yeah,
one of those bad turnovers that as a running back you just can't make. So I know Jamal Williams just got his first lost fumble of his career, and it essentially lost the game. So it's definitely not going to fumble the ball. Travis Kelce made it back up to the top 5 in receiving. Ooh. He was number 7, and now he's number 5 again. So we have Justin Jefferson, which he just went over Tyreek Hill. And it's funny because Justin Jefferson actually has 99 receptions. Tyreek Hill has 100. So Justin Jefferson has 1 less reception and 40 more yards. So that's pretty interesting. Devontae Adams is number 3. He just made the top 5 with 12 touchdowns as well. Point that out. Travis Kelce is number 5. Stephon Diggs and then Travis Kelce. So all of these receivers are doing really good. One is a tight end, but definitely means a lot to their teams. The quarterbacks have a lot to do with it because they're targeting them. And I think if we're talking stats, you're not going to get numbers if you're not being targeted. But these guys are reliable, so that has a lot to do with why their numbers are on top.
Yeah, and Travis Kelce hit the 10,000 career receiving yards mark. He's the 5th tight end to do that, and strictly only the regular season. Behind some good names like Shannon Sharp, Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten. So shout out to him, and he's always up there in yards. And will he ever hit a peak? We don't know. He just keeps doing what he's doing, and he's the most consistent tight end in the NFL, and he's one of the best to ever play the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up the scoring chart again. I did bring this up a couple weeks ago. Total touchdowns, I sorted it by. So the Eagles just hit 50 total touchdowns. The Chiefs are at 46. Wow. The Lions are number 3 at 42. The Cowboys at 40 and the Bengals at 40. So if you're looking at total touchdowns, you can see a lot of the, and then the spread right here, because you can see how much it's spread out. 27 rush touchdowns, 22 receiving touchdowns, where the Chiefs are mostly receiving touchdowns. So you can see how they've been more efficient with total touchdowns because they've been spreading the ball out, running it and passing it, where the Chiefs, they mostly relied on Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes to score touchdowns. Anything stick out here?
The Eagles, they have, looks like they have 49 offensive touchdowns and 50 total. They're almost averaging 4 a game, which is absolutely ridiculous. They're playing phenomenal football. The Lions are the surprise here, and the Cowboys with their defense playing so well. It's good to see that they have they don't have touchdown on the defensive side of the ball. I feel like that's I might have to look at that and see, but is that total touchdowns offense and defense, or is that
I thought it was only offense, but you're right. This doesn't
that's
add up.
right? So
Um,
yeah, they might not have a defensive touchdown, but
right.
either way, as a whole, a lot of these teams are balanced, minus the Lions. But they're showing progress. They're making plays. Aiden Hutchinson's playing really well, but they're just missing a lot of key positions on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, there hasn't been much scoring on the defense, but there have been impact plays which led to a
Right.
score. So I guess
Yeah.
defensively you can count that as a as a touchdown, like, and
Mhm.
maybe count like an interception that leads to a touchdown. You might be
Yeah.
able to say that that's really good for the defense. So that's all I got. Do you have any more stats that you want to tell us?
He who must not be named, Deshaun Watson. He threw his first touchdown in 707 days. They're still not playing well at all. But 707 days, that's crazy to think about in terms of how long it's been since he's done that, since we've seen that on the stat sheet. Will he get more than one touchdown in any game for the rest of the season? We'll wait and see. But the Browns fans, no matter what you think of them, the Browns fans are hoping because that's their favorite football team. And you just kind of have to run with it as best as you can. Yeah. Most 10-plus wins in a season by a head coach. Andy Reid hit his 17th season with 10-plus wins. That's wow. He's one of the best to ever do it with the Eagles and the Chiefs. Behind that, that's Don Shula, rest in peace, one of the best to do it with the Dolphins. And Bill Belichick, who coached the Browns for a very small amount of time, and then coached the Patriots. And no surprise there, but Andy Reid deserves a lot of credit. He's not just a Kool-Aid man on the sideline. He's playing phenomenal. So, yeah, that's A.J. Brown along with Miles Sanders. They both hit 1,000 yards in their respective stats. A.J. Brown's the first one to do it since 2014 as well. Jeremy Maclin was the last to do that for the Eagles. So the Eagles are making history as a whole. I know they won it back in 2018, but in terms of regular season and the balance that they haven't had this in a long time. They're playing very well, and if you have Jalen Hurts on your fantasy team too, that's very good. But yeah, fantasy football playoffs are coming up. Do you have any fantasy teams?
Yeah, I have one I think that made the playoffs, but my other 5 I did not. So it's been a really bad year for me.
Yeah.
And what hurts is every week I checked my lineups, I updated my lineups, I grabbed from waivers, I made trades, and I still lost. And so,
yeah, it's a luck game.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people can say they're good at fantasy, but I'm like, no, you just picked good in the draft.
Yeah, so you could do your research, you could do everything right. You could be active on the waiver wire. You could make trades when necessary, and you feel like they're good trades. But at the end of the day, your players have to produce. Yeah, and it's just not the same as players get hurt. It's just not the same as a regular team, and you can't blame teams for doing their best to win and not caring about your fantasy football playoffs because it doesn't really matter to them, and it shouldn't. That's the beauty of fantasy football play. That's why it's so much fun because they're unpredictable at times. But when you get that big win, hopefully it works out for you. Hopefully, I'm in a lot of dynasty leagues, and it's a lot of fun because then once the offseason hits, a whole new. It's like a year-long fantasy football, so it's awesome.
Last week, I played the 10-2 team in my league, and I was I was 2-10, and so I was 2-10 playing the 10-2 team. I had the Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown stack, and I beat him. I won, and so that was really cool. It was so exciting. I know I didn't make playoffs, not even close, but it was cool to win still. So before we sign off, I want to ask you a question.
I have an answer.
The Los Angeles Rams are the only franchise in history to win championships representing 3 cities: Los Angeles, St. Louis, and what? It was 1945. They were in this city, and they were the only NFL franchise to win championships representing 3.
St. Louis, obviously. The Los Angeles. I can't even think of it. Is it in Texas?
No.
No? Can you give me a hint?
It's not the Browns.
No. It's not Cleveland.
It's Cleveland.
Oh, it is Cleveland.
They were Cleveland Rams.
Dang, why? Oh my gosh. Why did I?
So
Yeah.
the Cleveland
That makes
Rams
sense.
moved to St. Louis, then moved back to Los Angeles, then moved to St. Louis again, then moved to Los Angeles again. So after the Cleveland Rams left, Cleveland wanted another football team, so that's when the Cleveland Browns were established when they relocated to Cleveland.
Huh.
And so Los Angeles the Rams are the only franchise in history to win 3 championships in 3 different cities.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, honestly. It looks like they were in Cleveland for like 10 seasons or so.
Yeah.
And then they were in LA for a while, but that's pretty cool. I had them in the back of my head. I know you won't believe me. I had Cleveland in the back of my head. It just didn't feel right. I don't know.
Yeah, I did. I thought the Browns were older. That's why I was kind of confused. But I guess I was wrong. I mean, the Lions weren't even a team till what? It was 54. No, that was the Lions' first championship. Do you know what team the Detroit Lions were before they were the Lions?
I do not.
The Portsmouth Spartans.
Portsmouth Spartans. Go Spartans, baby. We need that nickname back for the next team that has to change their name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the
Indianapolis Spartans.
Indianapolis Spartans.
I like it.
Me too. Let's start a petition.
Let's do it.
So that concludes the 11 Yards podcast presented by Legit Football. Jimmy, it was nice having you on. Any last thoughts?
No last thoughts, but I'm down to do a trivia question every week. I'll bring one. You bring one next week. We'll see how it goes.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. We'll keep track and see if we can get start scoring it.
Works for me.
The contest. All right. Cool. Well, I'll see you later. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.